Hello, welcome back to Connect the World. I'm Lynda Kinkade. Thanks for joining us. 2017 was Donald Trump's first year as the US president, and it's fair to say he made sure it was eventful. As we reported at the beginning of the program, we're just 2 days in, and 2018 is already shaping up to be a busy year for Mr. Trump. Joe Johns looks ahead.
President Trump returning to Washington with a large legislative to-do list and a range of international issues on his plate.
Everybody's going to love is what's happening with our country, because we're taking this big, beautiful ship and we're slowly turning it around. I'd like to do it faster.
Mr. Trump weighing in multiple times over the holiday on the deadly anti-government protest in Iran, saying that Iran is failing at every level and calling for change after warning the U.S. is watching very closely for human rights violations.
It's not enough to watch. President Trump is tweeting very sympathetically to the Iranian people, but you just can't tweet here. You have to lay out a plan.
Iran's ambassador to the U.K. calling the tweets offensive in an Instagram posting Monday night. As for Kim Jong-un's New Year's threat that the nuclear button is always on his desk, President Trump saying only this:
"We'll see. We'll see."
The former chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff warning that the U.S. is closer to a nuclear war with North Korea than ever before.
I don't see the opportunities to solve this diplomatically at this particular point.
The Trump administration's relationship with Pakistan also strained heading into the new year. Mr. Trump accusing Pakistan of lying and deceiving the United States in his first tweet of the year, and again alleging that the country's leaders have given safe haven to terrorists.
We have been paying Pakistan billions and billions of dollars. At the same time, they are housing the very terrorists that we are fighting.
A National Security Council spokesman later saying the U.S. will continue to withhold $255 million worth of military aid from the country. Pakistan responding by summoning the U.S. ambassador for a meeting and promising to respond shortly to let the world know the truth. All this as the administration confronts a number of legislative deadlines back here in the U.S. The first, a January 19th deadline to pass a spending bill and avert a government shutdown that could cost billions. One issue that will be front and center, protection for so-called dreamers who were brought to the country illegally as children. The president insisting there will not be a deal on DACA without funding for a wall, a non-starter for Democrats.
Will you give anything to the president on border wall funding in order to get a DACA deal done? Because he says
No.
it's...
Well, plenty to discuss with our next guest, David Sanger, who joins us via Skype. He's a CNN political national security analyst. He's also a national security correspondent for the New York Times. Great to have you with us, David.
Good to be back with you.
Well, after a 10-day holiday, President Trump is back to work and back to Twitter. And despite his America First agenda, he has been very busy in the first 2 days of 2018, tweeting about international affairs.
Well, when you think about it, many of his tweets in 2017 were on international issues, including some of the ones that the administration found the hardest ones to integrate in with their national security strategy. But, you know, what we've seen him say in the past 2 days hasn't been wildly offline. The Pakistan elements that you just referred to in Joe's setup there is an argument that's been going on between Washington and Pakistan for many years. The Obama administration temporarily withheld some of these payments, which are payments for counterterrorism operations. You know, in New York in the fall, the Pakistani president was in town. He's sort of an interim, was filled in after President Sharif. And what's been interesting about all of this is that he basically denied that there was any terrorism problem left in Pakistan. Well, clearly that's not the case. So it's going to be an interesting standoff, and if the tweet has caused the Pakistanis to go take another look, or the Pakistani military, at what kind of problems they face, that one may not be entirely bad. Iran is more complicated because the president's got to walk a very fine line between supporting the protesters, which President Obama later regretted he had not done more forcefully in 2009, and not letting the government make the argument that the U.S. is instigating any of this. And that's a very tricky thing.
Let's just look at North Korea for a moment, David. As North Korea reaches out to the south to seemingly start dialogue, they've also made the threat again at the US, saying that the US is within range of our missiles. Could this dialogue between the North and the South put the US in a more precarious position?
Well, it certainly has the possibility of putting a wedge between the South Koreans and the U.S., allies of some 7 decades. And the reason for that is that the North Koreans have rather cannily noticed that President Moon in South Korea, who just came in the middle of last year after his predecessor was forced to resign, President Moon has basically argued for negotiations without much precondition with the North Koreans, has called for a cessation for a while, at least during the Olympics, of the military exercises with the United States, and has said that he has a veto over any American military action against the North, something that people in the administration tell me is not the case. So I think that Kim Jong-un has looked at this and said, gee, there's a moment here to open up some space between the South Koreans and the U.S., and he's picking a very opportune moment to go do it because he knows it would be extremely difficult for President Trump to order any kind of military action for the same reason President Obama considered it and dispensed with it, which was the huge impact it would have if the North Koreans retaliate against Seoul.
And David, just quickly, the Russia investigation is expected to wrap up this year. Already 4 Trump associates have been charged. Can we expect more to fall, or is it likely that the president could pardon his aides or family members who may be implicated?
Well, you know, I wouldn't make many projections or predictions for 2018, but one I would is that a year from now, if we're doing a similar broadcast, I'm betting the Mueller investigation is still ongoing. I don't see any evidence that it's wrapping up anytime soon. The president's lawyers told him it would be wrapped up between Thanksgiving and Christmas, but I'm not sure they said what year. That's going to be going on for some time. My suspicion is that there'll probably be some other indictments, but the real significance of the indictment so far and the plea deals have been the question of how much those who have been indicted, particularly Michael Flynn, the former national security advisor, and a young foreign policy aide, how much they know and how much they're cooperating in the current investigation. Then there's a Senate and a House investigation. The House investigation isn't going very well, but the Senate investigation seems to be pretty serious. And when I recently saw Richard Burr, the chairman of the Senate Investigatory Committee, it's the Intelligence Committee, he thought this was going to go on for longer than he had anticipated.
Right. So, David Singer, you think we could still be talking about the Russian investigation into 2019?
Easily. I'm not making any predictions yet for 2020, but check with me next year.
I will do. David Singer, good to have you on. Thank you.
Great. Take care.